Welcome to another episode of the Perfect RIA Podcast. I'm your co-host, Matthew Jarvis. With me today, special guest, Nick Davies. Now, I was introduced to Nick by Aaron Palmer. You might remember Aaron. He was on a podcast earlier, I believe last year. But Nick coaches financial advisors, which I love. Obviously, I love financial advisors, being one myself. But Nick, really excited having the show today to talk about how this dichotomy or this juxtaposition of to become a seven-figure advisor, you got to grind like a mother effer. But how do you grind like that without shortchanging your family? And I guess I'm going to flip this on its head as well. A lot of advisors say, hey, listen, I would grow, but I don't want to shortchange. Like sometimes it's, I love this. For those of you not watching the video, like Nick's just fired up. Like he's tearing the walls off this place because I hear guys all the time, Nick, they're like, oh, well, I mean, I could be $1 million producer, but I don't want to cheat my family. Like, wait a second, that's not an either or. So man, fire away, dude. Give it to us.
Yeah, that's it. Great to be here, Matt. Super pleasure. I've been pumped from this since we met, and really cool. So I appreciate it so much. Absolutely fires me up because what happens is in the mindset flow of this that advisors start their practice, they start cranking on it, right? They're working hard, and it starts to work. Right, working hard starts to get results.
Yeah.
But after a while, we run out of time and space, and then what tends to happen is it starts to impact our most important relationships. Starts to impact our families, starts to impact our health. And then somewhere along the line, they'd say, I can't do it, or it doesn't work for me. And what typically can happen is there's some stagnation, but really what happens is that you tend to let go of the dream of being that seven-figure mindset next. And you settle on certain things because you say, looking after my family and my most important relationships is more important, which it is.
It is, yeah.
But it doesn't have to be either or. The point is that we should be setting up goals and focuses in our business such that it's complementary to our most important relationships and looking after us.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And of course, you've worked with Aaron for a lot of years. That's how we met, and we won't obviously divulge any of Aaron's information. But Aaron has always struck me as a guy, again, a phenomenal advisor. But his family is such a high priority. Like he's figured out how to do both of those, and I think a lot of people have. But Nick, what about the guys that don't? Like, I feel like we meet a lot of advisors who don't have a great practice and they don't have time for their family. Like they have like the worst of both worlds. Like, how is there such a difference between those advisors that have the worst of both worlds and advisors like Aaron that are running a phenomenal practice or a phenomenal advisor and they're taking all the time in the world with their kids and their spouse?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to say about that in terms of how you would get that.
Yeah.
Momentum is such an important piece because when we hit certain levels in our businesses, there's a chance where you've got enough pain to get leverage on doing something, right? So think of the psychology of why those things happen. So pain we do everything either to avoid pain or gain pleasure.
Yeah.
And that pain is a really powerful motivator, but humans are really good at enduring. And so what would happen is if we don't move when we have that pain, that initial pain, we start to get used to it. Right? We start to get used to it.
Interesting.
And because we get used to it, we settle into it, and we haven't got the leverage on ourselves to change something. And so it gets to the point where people wake up and they're a year, 6 months, a year, 10 years in, a lifetime in, of not getting where they want to get to. And of course, this extends all through business, but any type of business, really, any parts of our life. But that's what I believe is the primary factor, right? Because we're not leveraging the pain that we need.
I think that's a super interesting perspective. I guess I've never framed it that way. I've always kind of framed it. It's the same thing though. It's like this comfort zone, especially in our industry where you can make a lot of money in our industry. I mean, if you're making 100, 200, 300,000, like that's a phenomenal income, right? That's more than most people make. But if you can get to $200,000 or $300,000 of production, you can get to $1 million or $2 million. And Nick, feel free to jump in here if you feel like I'm off base. But I have felt like every advisor I met that could get to 200 or 300, he or she could get to $1 million or $2 million. But I get what you're saying about like, hey, the pain of sitting still, like I've kind of just gotten used to that. I've kind of got the pain that I'm not reaching my potential, but I haven't leveraged that into like, damn it, I'm not going to stay here at 300. I got to get to $1 million or $2 million or $5 million or whatever the number is. Talk to us about this, dude.
Yeah, totally, man, because it's exciting and scary to go to do something new. And the longer you sit with not moving, the more that you actually appreciate the place you don't want to be. And think about what I just said. Appreciate the place you don't want to be.
Huh.
Because there's also now pain of moving as well as pain of staying.
Yeah.
Keeping the momentum is so important. So you mentioned the comfort zone. I built like this visceral response to that word or that phrase.
I love it.
Because it's the scariest place in the
It
world,
is. It's
right? Because it's
terrible.
comfort zone's like having this warm blanket over you, and it's like everything's okay, and this divide of motivation and leverage, right? And so I hope the advisors that are listening to this, they want to turn it off, right? They want to turn it off and go, I don't want to hear it, right? Because there's people listening right now going, I know I should probably do something. I know I could. I know I'm capable of more. I know I want more. I know I owe it to myself, to my family. But I just can't. I don't really want to hear it. I'm okay. Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
And look, everyone feels this. It's okay.
Sure.
It's our job. My job certainly is to stir up some of this pain because I care. And this is how I'm going to help so many advisors by getting out there and calling it as it is, right? Because there's lots of leverage in knowing that we could create lots of things, and reminding ourselves of those things is so very important.
Yeah, I mean, I get your visceral reaction to the comfort zone thing, but we could go a deep ways because, like, I think one of the places this really bites us is we think, oh, I've only let off the gas in one area. Like, hey, I've just let off the
Mm-hmm.
gas in prospecting. But Nick, have you ever seen somebody let off the gas successfully in one area and not just have the whole thing let off the gas? Like, I don't know. Like, and again, you're the pro here. Like, I don't know that that's possible. I feel like once you start letting off the gas, now this isn't like intentionally saying like, hey, listen, I want to stop my team at 3. I don't want to grow to a 10-person team. I think that's different. But this is saying like, hey, listen, I'm just going to let off the gas here, but only in this one spot. But I feel like we always let off the gas everywhere. And then this chronic pain starts building up and we just make excuses for it and call it the comfort zone. Like, jump in here, man. Like, have you seen it differently?
So, no, totally. The difference is you mentioned is the intention around it.
Yes.
So letting yourself off the hook and off the gas in one area, but doing it in a way where you're pretending not to look at it is different from saying my focus is here and I can't be everywhere at once, and so I'm okay with this being in a different spot.
Yeah.
And it's like the old analogy of spinning the plates. When we're spinning the plates, like you've got to think about that, right? It's like let's say you've got a room full of plates. Now, not every one of those plates is going to be most important than everyone else, right? So the easy way out is to say, oh, all the plates are important. So they can only spin at a certain rate. Like there's only a certain RPM I can keep up with all these plates. That's the easy way out. But as leaders, as business owners, we've got to be ruthless to do the things only we can do. We've got to think about those plates and go, okay, 80-20 rule always applies. If I've got 20 plates and the 80-20 rule only applies, there's 4 that really actually matter.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to spin those to a pace in which that's really going to move the needle in my business and my life. It's going to make me walk through the door to a client or a prospect meeting going, I know I did the right things today. I'm doing the right things in my practice. That itself brings massive value because you're bringing a better version of yourself, influencing your clients to get the things that they want. Right? And when you do that, then when you go home, you do the same. You walk through the door to your family. When you walk into the gym, when you look after yourself in whatever way you're choosing is, you're going to come to a better version of that as well. And then you focus on those 4 plates, and that gives you more capacity, right, to look at maybe I can spin other plates quicker, or bring other people in to spin the other plates for you, and be okay that some might slow down and might even break, because that's part of the ruthlessness of it. I think that's what we.
Yeah, it is.
When we hit some level of success, I believe we have a responsibility to be even more successful. Right? That's part of it, right? And it's that ruthlessness we have to say we can't be everywhere at once, but where we are going to be, we're going to be all in, and we're going to be committed to that result.
Yeah, boy, there's so many different directions we can go. There's so much head trash we have too. Like, but it all ties back. I think, Nick, like you're saying, letting ourselves off the hook. It's like, well, I want to spend more time with my family, or I'm not greedy, or I don't need more money. And I guess those are all one ways to look at it. I always try to use this other one of like, really, so I'm going to limit the number of people I'm going to help. That's what I'm saying is like, and I always like, it's this leverage pain thing. I guess this is to your leverage pain point. If I'm going to let off the gas, what I'm saying is there's people in the world who need my help as a financial advisor, and you know what? They're just tough luck. Like they're on their own, right? Or when I say, hey, there's causes in the world that I care about, you know what? Those causes I care about, they're on their own. They can't expect any donations from me. Like, sure, if I just spun the floor plates instead of screwing around with 20 plates, I could give this cause I care about a lot of support. But instead, I'm just gonna slack off. So I guess it really does come back to this like leverage pain, man. Like, just don't confuse comfort with not being in pain.
Right, because and you might say, I'm happy with the way things are. Even if you really are truly happy with the way things are, great, everyone gets to choose.
Yeah.
But if you don't push forward on where you are, the natural order of things is it will progress. You know, it will get worse and people will come by you as well. And so you, by default, the only thing you can do is move forward, even if you want the status quo to be true. And I find a lot of comfort in that.
No, I love it. I love the control that we can take over it. It's
Yeah.
not like an external force. Let's pivot this a tiny bit, Nick. Sometimes where we'll use this excuse of, "Hey, I would move forward if," we use this excuse, "Hey, I would move forward if I had a better team." Like, "Hey, listen, I have to spin all these plates because my team can't spin the plates. I'm not going to do anything about the team," right? So this always becomes like our thing. Like, it's not me letting off the gas, Nick. Like, I've got foot on the gas. I got this team foot on the brakes. What am I going to do? Surely you hear this from advisors or some variation of it.
Yeah, and I don't get this out very much. But I used to get out and wave my red flag so often, right? When I hear that you know, it's my BS flag, right? This is my
Is it? Yeah.
belief systems, right? It's exactly that, right? Because if advisors saying, "No, it's my team, it's my team, it's my team," right? It's all roads lead back to you, right? And
Yeah.
but also to say, right, if that really is the case, okay, well, how important is it for you to become the advisor you want? If you really look at it for a second, how does it play into the man that you want to become, that you're moving towards, perhaps the father you want to be, how your family look to you, how your clients look to you, just how you look at yourself in the mirror. And look, not to get too deep on it, but it really is that important.
It
Right? It
is.
really is that important to think about what type of life do you want to live, or who do you want to be? What's the legacy that you want to leave? Because all of these things are about that. I mentioned before we started here that I just came back from England to visit my aging parents, and I think about where they are now and the things that they set up or didn't set up and the things that me and my brother have got contended and stuff. And so like it's visceral for me to come back and think about that for my life right now. So it's fun in that case, and probably why it's on my mind even more. But it's so important to think about, okay, what am I doing in my business? And how am I complicit in the things I say I don't? Right? So if it's my team that's a problem, okay, am I really willing to get to where I want to get to? Okay, well, what's the thing that you're scared about? Now, if we go back to our plates for a second, the reason we spin all 20 plates is because we say, "Oh, look, they're important. They're important. I can't focus on that one because they're all important. I've got to be everywhere." And maybe you can do enough just to stop them breaking. You know what? I'd much rather them break because then we're back to the pain again. We've got some of those plates are breaking, then that's a good thing because you'll do something about it. So maybe your example of the team not being the right team, hopefully one of them leaves. Now you've got to do something about it.
Yeah.
Like, that's a good thing. And so lean into it before it gets to that point, like rolling on the momentum.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I'd be curious your thoughts, Nick. This is a lesson that took me a long time to learn that there's some plates that are going to be harder for me to spin than other plates, either because of my skill set or my personality or my strengths or my weakness, whatever the case may be. And I used to think like, well, that's just how it is. Like that just sucks. I'm stuck. I got one arm tied behind my back because of whatever reason. And then I started realizing, like, wait a second, there's people out there like yourself, Nick, who are really good at spinning certain plates. I know that Aaron, who introduced us, said one of the most valuable things you did for his team, or one of the things was working with his team members. And I know I've had coaches come in and work with my team members because I say, great, like my ability to coach and lead and mentor team members is not my strongest suit. Like maybe someday it will be, right? But that doesn't mean I'm just going to throw in the towel on that. Like I can bring somebody in and say like, "Hey, listen, I got this team member who's struggling and he or she needs some help that I just don't know how to give yet." So I could just say, "Great, I'm going to quit here and let off the gas." Or I could say, "Hey, like somebody else can solve this problem," right? Talk to us a little bit about, bringing help in for team members.
Absolutely. I would also say one of the things I hear as well from advisors is I'm not ready to bring up team members as well. So building the team, but also helping the team that they're there.
Yeah.
Because we tend to, when it's emotionally loaded, we tend to think it's either black or white. The light switch is either on or off.
Sure.
Meaning I've got to bring this like licensed person in, or I've got to bring this full-time person in. When really don't necessarily have to do that. It's like, how can I leverage bits and pieces into my business? How can I share someone? How can I bring in someone part-time? How can I bring in vendors? And certainly coaching is part of that as well. I bring in other people to have a team. You should have a team. You don't have to all be full-time people to be able to do that. And so I really want advisors to think about how might you build out what you've got without having to have a full-time staff and really think about it that way. How can you create this almost board of directors as well as like team members actually coming in and doing the work that are able to support you in that? Right? I mean, listening to your podcast is one way. I have an example, funny enough, from a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago, and he was telling me about some business partners he was bringing on and to work with. And he was driving to a trade show or something, and he was listening to a podcast, and the podcast was about communication and being able to respond rather than react. And this is the work he does because we do this work every week together. And because he's constantly training, constantly practices, constantly in like the emotional gym, he got to this event and he found that his new business partner had really screwed something up and cost him a bunch of money. But because he was resetting his mind, it was much easier for him to respond to that rather than react. And so we want to make sure we've got this team around us that we can also leverage to be able to help out the team directly. So to go back to your initial question, it's really important to think about, look, if you're an advisor, your number one piece is to show up. Two things really I believe advisors to do. Everything else someone else can do. Number one is, of course, I love your take on this. Number one is to show up for your most important clients.
Yep.
Number two is to set the strategy and vision for your business. Everything else, I believe, really someone else can do. Now, it's an aspirational viewpoint, but that's the way to think about it, right? Because even if you're great at what you just suggested, you probably shouldn't be doing it. Right? You should be doing that because there's, like you said earlier, there's clients out there that aren't getting value from you yet because you haven't met them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're helping your team come to that next level, then it means you can't do that as well. So bringing in people to help support that, and getting out of your own way is another big level of success. And back to the leverage of money.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I want to rewind just a tiny bit, Nick, to something you just mentioned about the emotional gym. Like you gave the example of the client whose partner had really screwed something up. And I feel like this is something that's not spoken about much in the industry. So I'm glad you brought it up. Which is like from an emotional standpoint, I want to be careful I don't get too like, woo, here we're gonna lose the audience, right? Or just me. Uh, I guess a lot of times we think like, hey, how I reacted to this thing is how I have to react to it. Like a prospect says, no, they don't want to hire me, and I'm crushed by it. And I tell myself, well, that's just how I have to react to this. Or a team member screws something. Like we've all had team members screw up things. I don't know which yours was. We've all had one. Some of them cost real money and cause real problems. And we get angry and whatever our response is, and we just think, hey, I have to respond that way. That's just how you respond to this situation. But it sounds like with this emotional gym approach, there's ways to learn this. And I guess maybe for some people listening, they're like, duh, Jarvis, of course there's ways to learn this. But I feel like a lot of us never figure that out. We're like, every time a prospect says no, I'm crushed for 3 days. Or there's another way to approach it. So peel that onion for us for a second, Nick.
I was actually listening to one of your old episodes a couple of days back. I can't remember which exactly it was, but it was you and Mike talking about going in to deliver value for clients. Like rather than thinking about the technical approach to set up, actually going in and thinking about how do I talk to someone, how do I add the value, what do I need to actually know. And so what we talk about here is the opposite version of that, right? It's when something happens that we don't expect. That's not the opposite version of it per se. When I say that, what I mean is like in a situation you didn't expect. So we're going forward with the people do things based on emotion and then they justify through logic.
Of course.
And so think about it from a reaction standpoint. The more that we can practice how we want to respond, the more likely that in the moment we're going to be able to respond and not react. And think of it like the military, right? The military are training to be in battle. It's not like, oh, we're going to go to war. Okay, let's start working out. Right? Let's start practicing drills. You have to be ready all the time. And I think that's what we have a responsibility to do as business owners as well. We have to be emotionally ready and training that all the time as well. So, and not just for clients, prospects, they said no to that big opportunity, but also for team that we're talking about here as well. How do you lead your team through reviewing the compensation structure? How do you lead your team through, say, that the revenue wasn't there, the bonuses are different than they expected? How do you lead your team through the leaps and bounds that they want to make and to say that it's not the right time for them because my business is going in a different direction? All of those things give us that will require that emotional gym and that leverage point around.
What does that practice look like? Let's get real tactical here. So let's use this example of a team member screwing something up, right? They did the paperwork wrong, or they didn't return a client's phone call, or they placed a trade wrong, whatever that is. What does practicing that look like? Like if you and I were working on that and I called you and I said, gosh, Nick, the team, they screwed this thing up again. They're a bunch of idiots. I feel like I should fire everybody, I have whatever action I have, but it's already like the damage has already been done. Like, How are you going to handle that? I can't rewind the clock, right? Like the time machine's broken. So how are we going to deal with that going forward? How are you going to deal with that in the moment? Like walk us through. And I know we don't have a lot of time, and you've got a full process for this, but give us some pointers in this.
Totally. And let's be real, like all of the high level advisors listening to this, super passionate, right? So there's likely going to be like, I spent all this time adding value to clients and this thing went wrong, right? So there's going to be that reaction. So
Yeah.
absolutely. So for me, a big part of it is setting up the system up front. I love the concept of the cadence of communication. So with your COO, your office manager, or your number one person in your team, and certainly they should have that with other people in their team, depending on how big your business is, of course, is to set up a regular cadence of communication. Now, we work in a world where a lot of asynchronous communication is really, really worthwhile, but that is reactive communication a lot of time. You need to have a standard sitting time in the calendar with the person that you're going to work with that's most important in your business. So you can have a standard agenda of things most important, what you're creating, how you're going forward, but it also acts as a place where you can use as a parking lot for those type of things to come up and say, look, you'll do what you'll deal with in the moment, because that's what will happen for that revenue. But we take that stuff and we put that and we actually talk through it in those moments as well. And it starts with working with the individual advisor to say, look, how do you want to think about things? What's the intention you've got with your team? And so for me, I always think about coming in and working in totality with the team. Okay, where are we going overall? Being really transparent as to like where are we going as a business and what does everyone individually want. So I love going through the team, seeing where their vision is for how that fits into the practice, no matter where they are in the team. And that allows us to create this circumstance where it's much easier to deal with that type of issue that comes up. And if it does come up, we have a place to put it. I mean, think about it, like with talked about our most important relationships, our spouses, our children a little bit earlier. And one of the reasons why we're so close to the people that we're close to in our life is because we go through significant emotional experiences. And that happens secondarily in our business. They're the people we spend our most time with. And so we've got to have a depth of understanding to deal with that stuff and be okay with when those things come up. And actually use it as a way that we grow. It's like every time that someone screws them up in the business, in fact, the more it costs, the more we pay for them to learn that lesson. Let's make sure that we do take that lesson.
That's an interesting mindset. It's a super interesting mindset, right? I've already paid to learn this lesson. Like, let's not throw it away. I also love, Nick, the point that you made about just by our nature, we're kind of an intense group, right? Like the personality it takes to be a financial advisor requires a certain level of intensity. So then it would make sense that we respond with intensity to all situations. I'm going to though echo this cadence of communications. When I get the best results from my team, when we have the best productivity all around, is when we have that regular cadence where every week we're checking in, every month, every quarter. Because it seems like a lot of times, and Nick, love your thoughts in our final minutes here. When these mistakes happen, it's a lot of times like we were waiting for a mistake to happen because I have all these unvoiced frustrations because we don't have a cadence. And it's like, this proves I was upset about this little thing. You know, we ran out of pens. I didn't want to say anything. And now you screwed up this thing and it proves to me that you're an idiot. Never mind that I hired you and kept you. Like, so again, if you guys are listening to watch, like Nick's just going all over the place. Like it's like a steam pressure relief valve, except the wrong direction. Instead of like pressure release, it's like just blowing up in our face. So I just love this part about the cadence. Nick, how would you start this? So as an advisor, if you're like, oh, I've never done a cadence of meetings, so I can't start, right? Like I've had this person for 5 years. We've never had a review. I can't start now. Like, give us this action. Like, how would you start this thing? I'm your assistant. I'm your junior advisor. I'm your whatever. We've never done a scheduled review. How are we possibly going to have this discussion, Nick?
Hit the reset button. You got a conversation with them. Hey, look, Matt, you're really important to me in my business, and I'm always looking to upgrade myself, and personally, that's going to upgrade our business overall, and you're a really important part of that. I love if we can grab some time, just not dealing with anything that's in front of us, set a time out, and I really want to hear about where you want to go, what you enjoy about what we do, and what you don't enjoy. And I want to be open to having that conversation because I want to help you grow because it helps me grow, and it's really important for us overall. Are you okay with that? Like, let them give that permission back as well. Right? Even if that that person works for you, it's so important to be able to have that open that open layer, right? Absolutely. Because as you said, you're a point where you go, okay, now I've got proof you're an idiot, right? So here's a direct way of how this also plays in other parts of your life. So go full circle back to your business should also be complementary and additive to your life as well, because that build up of all of those things, that esteem out, no cadence of communication, it can easily be translated to our relationships with our spouses. Right? If we haven't got the right cadence of communication there, the same sort of thing can happen.
Yep.
Even more important. So if we're practicing it in our business, it's much easier to practice it in other parts of our life as well, because you know what? We take ourselves wherever we go. It's not foolproof, but that's the concept, right? If I'm better over here, I've got to be better over here as well. So you raise the standard somewhere and you raise it somewhere else.
Which makes sense. That's like the other side of the coin from what we started off talking about, right? You let off the gas in one area, you let off the gas everywhere. If you raise the standard in one area, you raise the standard in all. I would I would echo. I know you kind of had it as a suggestion. I would say for my advisor friends that this isn't even a suggestion. This is a mandatory thing. Like if you want your practice and your life to keep going, you have to have these check-ins with your team members, with yourself, with your spouse, with your kids. Obviously, those are different discussions in each relationship. But I think if the script, Nick, that you gave, if this works for you, and you're like, oh, I totally get what Nick's saying. I mean, maybe even have them listen to this episode. Like, hey, I listened to this episode with this guy Nick and this guy Jarvis, and it seems like an idea. Like, let's try it out. Like, point the gun at us. That's totally fine. But if you find yourself still saying like, I can't do this, like for whatever reason, that's where you just call a guy like Nick or another coach and just be like, hey, listen, I feel like we need to do this, and I just don't know how to. And you are so important to me. The work that we do together is so important that I brought somebody in to help us. There is no shame in that. Nick, I know you're nodding along, but the number of times that it's transformed my practice to say like, hey, I know I need to be changing this thing, but for whatever reason, I would beat myself up for a long time. Like, oh, geez, I should be doing this. But at some point, like, listen, I need someone to come in. Like, I have this rock to lift up. It's heavier than I can lift. There's no shame in that. I just need someone else to come help me lift up this rock. And then someone like Nick, you come, you're like, actually, if you just look at it this way, it's actually a pebble. It's not a boulder. Like in your mind, it was a boulder. It's really just a pebble. We got this together, right? I love it.
Right,
Nick, go ahead, please.
no, it's and the further your business grows, the more support you need to bring around you, right? It's like it's not like, oh, I'm at a point now where I figured a lot of this stuff out, I can do it myself. It's the other way around, right? And it's like it seems
so true.
counterintuitive, like that's how that works. And it's like the further you go up, the more support that you need, and more specific support that you need in different areas as well, right? And the biggest thing to protect as an advisor is your time. Like, again, back to being ruthless around what you're doing with your time. And so you want to be constantly making sure that cup is empty so you can reuse that time, because that's the thing, that's the conduit, that's the triage everything comes through.
Yeah, well, we're gonna have to do another episode, man, together, because your time and then your mental bandwidth. I always talk about this with clients that aren't a right fit. Like any client that's a pain in your butt, and any client that questions your advice has to go because it's taking away from your capacity. So if I get on the phone with this client every time, and every time I talk to him, I feel drained emotionally, like that's all I have as a professional is like my mental fortitude. And so anything that's pulling that down in time is obviously the biggest example of that. But anything that's pulling down my fortitude has to go. Nick, so much appreciate your time. We're going to have to do another episode together. We'll put your contact information in the show notes. Want to help you achieve your goal of helping 100,000 advisors. You word it better than I do. 100,000 advisors get from wherever they are to a seven-figure production while still prioritizing their family, right? Did I get that close?
Right, absolutely. Like advisors on their seven-figure journey, but not compromising their family or their health. That's what it's all about.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Nick, for your time. And for all of our listeners, until next time, happy planning.